Have you ever wondered why some women, without even trying, seem to have men constantly returning to them again and again? It's not about beauty. It's not about playing games. It's not even about what they say or do. It's something deeper, something quieter, something magnetic. You see, the more a woman truly loves herself, not in theory, but in action, in presence, the more irresistible she becomes. Not because she's trying to be, but because self-respect has a frequency, and it pulls in everything aligned with it. Carl Jung once said, "Love does not begin by looking at another, it begins by looking within." This is not a trick, it's not a performance, it's a return. So what if the version of you that stops chasing, that stands fully in her truth, is the very version men cannot walk away from? In this video, you're going to discover 7 quiet, yet powerful actions that make men fall not just in love, but into something much deeper. And I need you to stay until the end, because the 7th act is the one they never see coming. It's the one that flips everything they thought they knew about you. It's the one that makes them beg, not just to be chosen, but to be kept. Most women are taught to look for love in a way that almost guarantees disappointment. They're told to be desirable, to be pleasing, to give more, love more, and wait patiently to be chosen. But underneath all of that effort is often something far more dangerous: dependence, not on a partner, but on the feeling of being validated, of being wanted, of being seen. The truth is, when love becomes a way to escape emptiness, it stops being love. It becomes a transaction, a performance, a chase for approval that only leads you further from yourself. Carl Jung believed that true love doesn't come when we crave it. It comes when we no longer need it, when we stop searching for someone to complete us, and instead begin the journey of becoming whole on our own. He called this individuation, the process of integrating all parts of yourself, even the ones you've hidden in the dark, especially those. That's why love that lasts doesn't begin in the arms of another. It begins in the moment you stop running from your own shadow, the moment you turn inward and say, "This is me, entirely, and I will not shrink to be loved." When a woman walks that path, when she stands in her quiet power without asking the world to understand it, everything changes. She's no longer magnetic because of how she looks or what she says. She's magnetic because she's real, because she knows herself. And that kind of presence is rare. That kind of presence rewrites the entire dynamic between a man and a woman. In the next few minutes, we're going to explore 7 acts that may seem small on the surface, but they hold something far deeper beneath them, something archetypal. These are the choices that shift everything. Not just how he sees you, but how you see yourself. And once you embody them, men don't just fall in love. They feel something they can't explain, something that pulls them in and won't let go. There is something quietly disarming about a woman who enters a room and does not ask to be noticed. She doesn't try to prove anything. She doesn't overextend. She doesn't adjust herself based on who's watching. And yet, somehow, she becomes the center of everything. People feel her presence before they hear her voice. The air shifts slightly. Conversations pause. Eyes follow. And she doesn't even flinch because she's not performing. She's simply being. That is power. And it has nothing to do with being loud or seductive. It has everything to do with knowing that you don't need to be chosen in order to have value. Carl Jung once said, "The woman who doesn't need to be chosen is the most dangerous of all." Why? Because she's free. Because she cannot be manipulated with breadcrumbs. Because she knows who she is, and that knowing radiates without permission. When a woman no longer needs validation, she becomes magnetic. Not in a way that screams, "Look at me," but in a way that says, "I see myself clearly, and that's enough." That energy is rare. That energy is unforgettable. And that energy can't be faked. It starts the moment you stop bending to be liked. It starts when you allow yourself to disappoint someone rather than betray yourself. It starts when you say, "No, not out of coldness, but out of clarity." Because the truth is, when you refuse to twist yourself into who someone wants, you force them to rise to meet you as you are. When you stop trying to please, you stop attracting those who expect you to perform. Instead, you draw in those who recognize value without you needing to advertise it. Let me give you an example. Imagine a woman walks into a room. She's dressed simply. No dramatic flair. No loud colors. She isn't laughing too hard to seem approachable. She's not scanning the room for attention. She simply enters and holds her ground. People notice. Why? Because presence doesn't come from effort. It comes from alignment. You feel her because she is not reaching for anything outside of herself. And that sense of self-possession, of calm, unapologetic wholeness is rare, and it's deeply attractive. Men especially feel it on a visceral level. They may not understand it consciously, but something in them knows. She doesn't need me. She chooses. And I want to be chosen by someone who doesn't have to choose at all. That flips the script. That changes the power dynamic. When you let go of needing to be picked, you reclaim the most sacred thing you have: your choice. Your yes starts to mean something, because it's not coming from fear or scarcity or the hope that someone will finally see your worth. It's coming from already knowing it. So how do you embody this energy in your daily life? You start by paying attention to where you shrink, to where you over-explain, to where you say yes when your whole body wants to say no, and you stop. Gently, firmly, you stop. You practice the art of disappointing others with grace. Not to be cruel, but to be real. You learn that silence can be more powerful than explanation. That walking away can be more attractive than staying where you're not respected. That withholding your energy is sometimes the highest form of self-love. And you remember, being chosen is not the prize. Being yourself is. A man may not fall in love with your performance, but he will never forget your presence. The woman who knows she doesn't need to be picked, she becomes the one no one forgets. The most captivating woman is not the one who is always available. She's the one who knows how to step back, how to hold her space, how to let silence speak. Because desire doesn't grow in constant access. It grows in the spaces in between, in the pauses, in the uncertainty, in the mystery of not always knowing what she's thinking, or where she's going, or whether she'll say yes this time. This isn't manipulation. It's magnetism. And it's deeply rooted in how we're wired. When something is always within reach, the brain adapts. Dopamine, the chemical of desire, starts to fade. But when something is just out of reach, just slightly unpredictable, the system fires up. That's where addiction begins. Not in comfort, but in tension. Not in the known, but in the chase. Carl Jung understood this too, but from a deeper psychological lens. He said, "The shadow is not evil. It's simply the unknown. And the unknown, what we can't quite grasp, is what we chase." When you're always explaining, always answering, always emotionally available, there's nothing left to wonder about. And when there's no mystery, there's no magnetism. You become emotionally obvious and eventually invisible. But when you know how to hold back, not from coldness, but from self-respect, you allow space for someone else to move toward you. And when they move toward you, that movement builds momentum. Not because you begged for it, but because you left room for it. This doesn't mean playing hard to get. It means being grounded enough to not chase after someone just because they pull away. It means knowing that real connection doesn't need to be forced. It flows, but only when both people are truly present. So what does this look like in real life? It means not answering texts instantly, especially when you're in the middle of something important. It means not rearranging your plans to be convenient for someone who's unsure about you. It means pausing before you explain yourself. Holding eye contact a little longer without rushing to fill the silence. Letting the conversation breathe, because in that breathing room, something begins to stir. He starts to feel the distance not as rejection, but as invitation. He starts to notice that your world moves with or without him. And suddenly, being part of it feels like a privilege, a guarantee. That contrast is powerful. You are not the echo that responds to every sound. You are the stillness that makes others listen. Let me be clear, this kind of space is not punishment. It's presence. It's the quiet confidence that says, "I am already full. You can come closer, but I will not shrink just to pull you in." Men crave this energy more than they even realize. It challenges them. It awakens something ancient in them, the desire to pursue, to earn, to prove. Not because you're demanding it, but because you've created the kind of environment where effort feels meaningful. When you're too available, there's no climb. When there's no climb, there's no peak. And when there's no peak, they stop looking up. But when you become the calm, grounded presence that doesn't chase, doesn't explain, and doesn't need to be needed, he begins to move differently. He leans in. He asks more questions. He pays closer attention. He starts to crave the version of you that isn't always accessible, because something about that feels more alive, more real, more sacred. This isn't about withholding love. It's about offering it with intention. The woman who knows when to step back becomes the woman who is constantly stepped toward. Not because she's playing games, but because she's mastered the art of leaving space for true desire to rise. And once that happens, once a man feels that gap between what he assumes and what he knows, she won't just want you. He'll feel pulled toward you in a way that defies logic. Because now, he's not just interested, he's intrigued. And intrigue, unlike interest, lingers. You are welcome to step into my world, but staying in it is not a right. It's a privilege. And only those who meet me with integrity, presence, and respect get to remain. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. This is knowing that love without boundaries is not love. It's self-abandonment. Carl Jung once said that setting boundaries is not about separation. It's about preservation. When you draw a line, you are not pushing someone away. You are simply protecting the form of your soul. You are declaring, this is who I am and this is where I end. Most women are not taught this. They're taught to be agreeable, to be understanding, to always keep the door open. But an open door to everyone becomes an invitation for anyone. And before you know it, your energy becomes a hallway traveled by many, but honored by none. A woman who sets loving boundaries changes that. She doesn't slam doors. She simply doesn't leave them unlocked for people who walk in with muddy feet and careless hands. She knows the difference between being kind and being available, between being loving and being unguarded. She understands that saying no doesn't make her difficult. It makes her discerning. Here's the truth most people won't say out loud. Men fall in love with women who don't let them get away with anything. It's not the woman who tolerates everything that earns his deepest respect. It's the one who calmly says, "That doesn't work for me," and means it. It's the one who doesn't scream or chase or explain endlessly, but simply withdraws when her standard is not met. Why does this work? Because it forces him to rise. It confronts him with the truth that her love is not passive. It's not for sale. It's not something he can claim and then neglect. He either shows up fully or not at all. And that pressure, that invitation to be better, activates something powerful in a man. It makes him see her not as a convenience, but as a mirror, a challenge, a standard he must meet not because she demanded it, but because she became it. But here's the part that matters most. She doesn't set boundaries to control him. She sets them to stay loyal to herself. That's the difference. She's not saying, "Change for me." She's saying, "This is who I am. If you can meet me here, we can grow. If not, I'll walk alone, without resentment." That kind of energy is rare. It's regal, and it's unforgettable. So how do you live this way? You learn to pause before you answer. You check in with your body before you say yes. You watch how people treat your silence, your limits, your truth. And when someone crosses a line, whether it's in their words, their absence, or their inconsistency, you name it, not with aggression, but with steadiness. You say, "This isn't aligned with what I want." You say, "I deserve presence, not performance." You say, "No, thank you," and then you let the space do the rest. Some will leave. Let them. Some will be offended. Let them. Some will step up, recalibrate, and come back better. And those are the ones worth letting in. Because a man doesn't fall in love with a woman he can control. He falls in love with the woman he cannot define, cannot manipulate, cannot bend to fit his comfort. He falls in love with the woman who knows her worth so deeply that it becomes the boundary. Not a wall, but a gate. One that only opens for the truth. And when he realizes that your world doesn't revolve around his choices, but around your values, something changes. He starts to choose you with more intention, more care, more depth, not because you demanded it, but because you quietly showed him what love feels like when it's rooted in dignity, and that kind of love, he'll never forget it. Do you love him more? Are you just afraid of being alone? It's a question most people avoid, because to answer it honestly would mean facing something we've been running from for years: the silence within ourselves. Carl Jung once said, "We don't fall in love with the other person. We fall in love with the fantasy that shields us from our own shadow." In other words, we use love as a hiding place, not a connection. We seek someone not because we're whole, but because we're scared of the parts of us we haven't made peace with. That's why so many relationships feel heavy. They're not built on shared growth. They're built on mutual avoidance. Two people clinging to each other to stay distracted from what they haven't healed. But here's the truth. The most powerful kind of love does not come from fear. It comes from fullness. And you don't reach that fullness by finding someone. You reach it by returning to yourself. That starts in solitude, not loneliness solitude. There's a difference. Loneliness is the ache that comes from being disconnected from yourself. Solitude is the peace that comes from learning how to sit with yourself fully, quietly, and without judgment. And when you master solitude, something in you shifts. You no longer chase people who don't see you. You no longer beg to be loved. You no longer perform to be chosen, because you've chosen yourself. This is the kind of energy that creates gravity. Not loud, not desperate, just grounded, just steady, just whole. That's what draws people in. Not your need, but your presence. Not your story, but your silence. So how do you begin? You begin by facing the parts of yourself you've ignored. The sadness, the shame, the fear of being left behind. The voice that says, "I'm not enough unless someone loves me." That is your shadow. It is not your enemy. It is your teacher. Jung called this shadow work, the practice of confronting the parts of ourselves we've buried, rejected, or denied. Not to fix them, not to erase them, but to make peace with them, to see them, to integrate them. And one of the simplest ways to start is by writing. Write when you're afraid. Write when you're angry. Write when you feel like reaching out to someone just so you don't feel the silence. Ask yourself, what am I really feeling? What am I running from? Don't edit. Don't perform. Just write. Let the words reveal what the noise has been hiding. You may discover that the heartbreak wasn't just about losing him. It was about the fear that no one would ever see you again. You may realize that the ache you feel at night has nothing to do with being unloved and everything to do with having abandoned yourself. And in those realizations, you begin to heal. Not by finding someone new, but by finding the version of you that you left behind. The one who deserved love before anyone said she was beautiful. The one who had dreams that didn't depend on anyone else clapping. The one who was whole, even when no one was watching. That's where your power lives. In the silence, in the stillness, in the decision to no longer run from yourself. Because when you stop fearing solitude, you stop settling for company that doesn't nourish you. You start choosing differently. You stop loving to escape your wound sand. Start loving from the wisdom of having healed them. And that energy is rare. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It simply exists. And it draws in the kind of love that doesn't need to be performed. So ask yourself, am I loving from fear or from fullness? Because only one of those will ever feel like peace. And only one of those will ever last. A woman doesn't need many words to be felt. Sometimes, a single glance is enough. Not just to catch someone's attention, but to make them feel seen, truly seen. There's a kind of presence that speaks louder than speech. A kind of stillness that lingers longer than any sentence. You've felt it before. You've seen someone walk into a space without needing to perform, and yet everyone noticed. It's not about volume. It's about vibration. Carl Jung once said, "The language of the soul is symbols, and the most powerful symbols are never spoken. They are felt. They are embodied. They are carried in the way we move, the way we pause, the way we hold eye contact, without trying to control how we're being perceived." This is what it means to communicate with energy, not explanation. Imagine walking into a coffee shop. You're not in a rush. You're not scanning the room. You're simply present. Your breath is slow. Your steps are grounded. Your shoulders are relaxed. You aren't trying to be noticed. But somehow, you are. That's energy. Now imagine sitting down, catching someone's gaze across the room, not with flirtation, but with steadiness. You don't look away too quickly. You don't overthink. You hold the moment. Let it breathe. Let it speak. That pause that silences says more than words ever could. Because when you master the pause, you create space for presence. When you stop rushing to fill every silence, you let your essence do the speaking. Most people are addicted to noise. They talk to avoid discomfort. They explain to be understood. But a woman who is rooted in herself doesn't chase understanding. She doesn't rush to explain her worth. She allows the room to feel it. And people do. This doesn't mean being aloof. It means being intentional. It means understanding that not everything powerful needs to be loud, that the softest touch can echo the longest. In conversation, it sounds like this. She doesn't interrupt. She listens fully. When she speaks slowly, deliberately, with weight. Her voice isn't rushed. It doesn't apologize for taking space. She doesn't overuse filler words. She allows silence to settle between phrases, and in that space people lean in. Because when someone speaks with that kind of calm certainty, the world quiets to hear. Even in disagreement, she doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't dominate. She doesn't need to win. She simply stands her ground with clarity and calm, and that alone shifts the dynamic. Men especially feel this difference. They're used to reaction. They're not used to resonance. And when a man encounters a woman who communicates with grounded energy, it touches something deeper, something primal, something sacred. He may not know why he remembers her, but he does. He remembers the way she walked, the way she looked at him like she already knew him, but wasn't trying to keep him, the way her presence made him slow down, even when he didn't want to, because energy speaks. And when yours is centered, clear, and calm, you become unforgettable. So how do you cultivate this? Start by slowing down. Pay attention to your breath, your body, your tone. Practice letting moments breathe. Resist the urge to fill every gap with noise. Speak from your core, not your nerves. Look people in the eye without rushing to look away. Not with challenge, but with openness. Let them feel you. And most importantly, trust that you don't need to prove anything. The less you try to be impressive, the more powerful your energy becomes. The world is full of noise. But a woman who moves with quiet power, she becomes the silence people remember. Not because of what she said, but because of how she made them feel. There is a quiet revolution that happens the moment a woman decides she will no longer edit herself just to be loved. When she stops adjusting her tone, softening her opinions, reshaping her body, or hiding her truth just to fit into someone else's idea of acceptable. Carl Jung once said, "We become whole the moment we stop playing roles for the sake of being accepted." That wholeness doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being real, from showing up exactly as you are and allowing that to be enough. There's a massive difference between trying to be loved and allowing yourself to be seen. Most of us are taught to perform for affection, to make up who we are so we're easier to like. Dress this way, talk that way, be agreeable, be charming. Be whatever you need to be, as long as it keeps people close. But here's the truth. Love that requires performance isn't love, it's survival. And survival isn't connection. It's fear. When a woman starts to choose authenticity over approval, something powerful begins to emerge. She stops walking into rooms wondering if she's too much. She starts wondering if the room is even enough for her soul. That's the shift. She no longer asks, "Do they like me?" She asks, "Do I feel safe being myself here?" That one question changes everything. Because when you love yourself in your unfiltered state, not just when you're polished, agreeable, or in control, you give the world permission to meet you at your center, not at your mask. It's the difference between makeup to fit and showing up as you are. This doesn't mean you stop caring about your appearance. It means you no longer dress for validation. You dress to express. You no longer smile to avoid conflict. You smile because something genuinely moved you. You don't stay quiet to be liked. You speak because silence would cost you too much. This is what emotional sovereignty looks like. And it's not easy. Because being real means you will be misunderstood. You will be too loud for some, too soft for others, too intense, too sensitive, too quiet, too much. But here's what's sacred. You'll finally be too much for the wrong people and just enough for the ones who matter. When a man meets a woman who refuses to shrink to be chosen, he doesn't know what to do at first. She doesn't beg. She doesn't convince. She doesn't mold herself to fit into his expectations. Instead, she stands, whole, grounded, unmoving. And in that presence, he sees something different. He doesn't see a puzzle to solve. He sees a world to explore, a depth he can't control but desperately wants to understand. She doesn't make it easy. Not because she's playing games, but because she's living in her truth. Her presence says, I am not here to entertain you. I am here to be experienced. If you want access, learn the language of my world. And that world isn't curated. It's layered. It's emotional. It's wild and soft and unpredictable and rooted all at once. That's the kind of energy that doesn't fade after the honeymoon phase. That's the kind of woman who doesn't need to be reminded of her worth, because she's already claimed it. So how do you embody this? You start by catching yourself when you try to adjust, when you edit your truth, when you smile to smooth over discomfort, when you wear something you hate just to be accepted, when you say yes because no feels risky. Then you pause and you ask, is this the real Mia, the version I think they'll accept? And you choose the real one, even when it's scary, even when it risks rejection, even when it feels like too much. Because the moment you do, something shifts in your energy. You stop chasing love. You start radiating it. Not the kind that pleads to be seen, but the kind that shines so clearly, others must learn how to hold it. You are not here to be liked. You are here to be known. And when you show up as you are, without apology, you become a world unto yourself. A man doesn't walk into that lightly. He learns to approach with reverence here, not at all. I don't need you to fill me. I want us both to overflow. That's the difference between seeking love out of emptiness and choosing love from wholeness. Carl Jung believed that true love is the union of two whole selves, not the merging of two halves. When two people come together not because they are missing something, but because they are already full, the relationship doesn't become a place of need. It becomes a place of expansion. And that kind of relationship feels different. There is no begging, no convincing, no grasping to make it work. There is ease. There is flow. There is space to breathe. When you are whole, love becomes something you offer, not something you chase. But most people aren't taught this. We're conditioned to think love is about completion, that without someone, we're incomplete. That romance is meant to fix the ache inside us. But love was never meant to be a bandage. It was meant to be a mirror and a fire. A mirror that reflects who we've become. A fire that helps us grow even more. When you begin to love from that place, everything changes. You stop entering relationships from fear. You no longer say, please love me so I don't have to face myself. Instead, you say, I already love who I am. I welcome someone who reflects that back to me. This doesn't mean you won't want closeness. It means you don't attach your identity to it. It means your joy doesn't collapse when someone leaves, because they weren't your source. They were your witness. When a woman steps into love with that kind of self-possession, a man feels it immediately. He senses he's not with someone who needs him to survive. He's with someone who has already learned how to live fully on her own. And because of that, she doesn't require his presence. She chooses it. That choice freely given, without pressure, becomes sacred. It's what makes him see her not as someone he can fix, claim, or control, but as a symbol, as something larger, as someone whose life is already full and who invites him to rise and meet her there. So how do you live this? You build your life first. You create joy in solitude. You build friendships that nourish you. You pursue work that inspires you. You heal the parts of yourself that once clung to validation. And you enter relationships not to feel worthy, but because you already know you are. This creates a shift in how you communicate. You don't text out of panic. You don't collapse when they pull away. You don't need constant reassurance. You are rooted, calm. You ask for what you want without fear. You state your boundaries without anger. You give without keeping score. Because your love is not a contract. It's an offering. When he feels that, when he feels your fullness, he understands he is standing in front of something rare. He's not dealing with a need. He's facing a presence. And presence cannot be manipulated. It cannot be owned. It can only be honored. Men are drawn to this energy not because it flatters them, but because it challenges them. It asks them to stop playing roles. It invites them into truth, into growth, into something real. And those who aren't ready, they'll walk away. Let them. You are not here to shrink for love. You are here to expand within it. So when you say to someone, "I don't need you to complete me. I want us both to overflow," you are not rejecting connection. You are elevating it. Because only in that overflow does real intimacy begin. Not the kind built on dependency, but the kind built on depth, on freedom, on two full lives meeting and becoming even more. These 7 acts are not tricks. They are not tactics. They are not designed to manipulate anyone into falling for you. They are a path back to yourself. Each one is a mirror revealing where you've been performing, where you've been shrinking, where you've been settling, and slowly they guide you back to truth. Not the version of you you've shown to be accepted, but the version of you that's been waiting underneath it all. Carl Jung said, "We are not loved because we are perfect. We are loved when we are real." And that's what this is about. It's about unlearning the idea that love must be earned through performance and remembering that your presence, as it is, holds more power than you've ever been told. The woman who walks this path isn't loud. She doesn't chase. She doesn't shapeshift to fit. She becomes still. She becomes grounded. She becomes herself. And in doing so, she doesn't just attract love, she redefines it. Because now, she is not looking for someone to complete her. She is looking for someone to reflect her, to match her, to grow with her. That is the kind of love that lasts. So take a breath, let this settle. And if something here spoke to you, if even one act made you pause, ask yourself what it's inviting you to shift. You don't need to do everything all at once. Just begin. With honesty, with presence, and if you're willing, I'd love to hear from you. What action are you beginning to embody today? Leave a comment and let it be your first step in this transformation. And if you found meaning in this, make sure to subscribe, because this is just the beginning of our journey into the deeper layers of love, healing, and the inner world through the lens of Carl Jung. Let's walk this path together, not to become perfect, but to become whole.